Who's steering this thing?
I have absolutely no idea, Martin. I was hoping it was going to be you.
Well, you see, today we have a brilliant guest with us who's steering for us. I'm Martin Osler, Partner and Chief People Officer at Johnston Carmichael.
And I'm Jude, Senior Manager in Talent and Learning. And today we're joined by Lynne Walker to talk about what it really means to lead through real life stories and lessons learned. Welcome to the very first episode of Who's Steering This Thing, a brand new podcast from Johnston Carmichael. As a UK firm of chartered accountants and business advisors, we firmly believe that everyone within our business is a leader of their work and of their learning, and for the impact that they make in their day-to-day. Each month, we'll hear from inspiring leaders who will share the challenges they've faced, how they've overcome them, what helps them build resilience, and what better way to launch this series with our own Chief Executive, Lynne Walker.
Absolutely. And Lynne, your journey with Johnston Carmichael began in 2005 when you joined our Inverness team as a newly qualified chartered accountant. And over the past 2 decades, Lynne has held key leadership roles across the firm, including our Head of Business Advisory, Partner and Vice Chair. In 2024, Lynne was appointed Chief Executive, steering Johnston Carmichael into its next chapter as we approach our 90th anniversary next year with a refreshed vision and strategy. A champion of collaboration, culture and progress, Lynne has consistently prioritised the growth and well-being of our people and clients. From our early days of navigating split offices in Inverness to leading strategic initiatives as CEO, Lynne's career is a testament to the power of resilience and teamwork. No pressure there, Lynne. We're thrilled to have you here to kick off our podcast series today.
Oh, thank you very much, Martin, Jude.
Lynne, thank you so much for joining us today. And I think to get us started, if you had to sum up what leadership meant to you in just a few seconds as a 30-second elevator pitch, what would that mean to you?
Well, thank you for the introduction. You've made me sound fantastic there. And if you know me well enough, then you know 30 seconds. I'm not sure I can quite keep to that, but I'll try my best. Leadership, I think, means different things to different people. And that's what can be great about it, how you interpret it. For me, it's about the ability to engage with people, to inspire and to influence them towards common goals or a shared purpose. It's about collaborating in a way that can really empower people to be the best that they can be, but to help achieve that shared purpose that we all have. Mm-hmm. Collaborating with teams, so I've gone over my 30 seconds, I'm sorry, but collaborating with teams of people that actually will be smarter than me as well, and that's how you'll get the best effect.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Lynne, you know, leadership isn't smooth sailing, we know that, very challenging most of the time. Can you tell us a bit about some of the biggest challenges you've faced on your journey so far?
Yeah, it's a really funny thing, isn't it, leadership, because often it's what everybody aspires to be. I want to be in a leadership role. And you try to strip that back, as you just said there, Jude, about everybody can be a leader in their work and in their learning. But as you become more senior and the leadership roles that you play maybe get a bit more of a spotlight, there's this assumption that you know what you're doing. The spotlights are on you, but people look at you to be decisive. They look at you to, I suppose, be that positive influence in everything that's going on, to reassure people, to influence people that we're going in the right direction. And often that can mean you're spinning plates. You're often smiling when underneath there's a little bit of anxiety that maybe goes on as well. But we're told to remain resilient. So show that resilience and lead the team. But it's not always that easy. No. And I don't want to take away, I love the role that I've got. And there's so many great opportunities throughout my career when I've been immensely proud and there's been all that positive outputs on the back of it. But times it can be really tough. And I'll go back to probably the biggest challenge in my career. And I know this is a cliche answer because it was the challenge for so many people. But for me in particular in 2020, when the pandemic hit. And although it was such a challenging time, so many great leaders were born from the experience that they went through back then. I was, to set a scene, a newly promoted partner. So 9 months into a role where I was leading a business line of 160, 170 people. And suddenly, boom, we're at home, and actually we didn't have the crystal ball. We didn't know what was coming next. But I felt that pressure of people looking at you and asking you, well, what do we do? What do we do tomorrow? What do we do next week? And it was probably the first real time in my career where, and I've talked about it before, that imposter syndrome, but where I suddenly went, I'm at home, I'm not surrounded by the rooms full of people that I normally have to talk things through with. Can I do this? Have I been promoted too early? And it was probably where I learned the most skills, though, during that time. Where to start with, you felt a bit more on your own. And I know we had teams, and you know, it wasn't teams like we have it now, though. I was used to an environment as a really social person where I like to get into a room full of people. I like to sort of talk out the problems, find the solutions collectively. And I know you could do that back there at home, but it really wasn't the same in that first few months, like it is today when we operate over Teams and we can collaborate. So I was finding myself in a moment where, how do I strike that balance between, I suppose, showing to the rest of our teams that I was confident in how we move forward, but in the background, when you turned off Teams, going, who's reassuring me? Like you would be if you were back in an office.
Yeah. One of the observations I would have about COVID and then post-COVID is that actually people have to line manage properly and lead properly now, whereas before, when everyone was in the office, you knew what everyone was doing, you could be present, you saw everybody, whereas now there are different challenges with hybrid working, with working on Teams. You know, how have you approached that? Do you think that gave you the platform to show who you really were as a leader and maybe elevated you beyond some other people, you know, had we all stayed in the office? Yeah,
so around that sort of line management, but even if you're not directly reporting into somebody, I think it was really important back then and still today. I talk about coaching with courage.
Yeah.
So you have to do the right thing, and the right thing is not always to tell everybody you've had a brilliant day and that meeting was fantastic and everything you're doing is on track. The courage piece comes from saying, okay, in that meeting we really should have done X, Y, Z, and I know you're talking about doing X, but really I need you to prioritise Y, and here's how we're going to do it, and here's how we're going to do it together. But you really had to be direct, and you had to empower people in a way that was different, because when you were off camera, you didn't know what people were doing. Nobody knew what each other was doing. And that's followed us through with hybrid working now. But we learnt the skills back then, as you said there, in how to coach and support people in a way to ensure that all objectives were met.
Yeah.
And part of that was about regularly checking in. It was about setting KPIs so you knew what success looked like and sharing that with teams as well. So it was always about collectively, here's what we're achieving.
Yeah.
And how did you manage that stress and pressure that you mentioned yourself through that COVID time, and I suppose now into what you're doing day to day?
Yeah, so it was about realising quickly that actually, although I felt on my own, as many people did, you're not on your own, and about the need to consult and to create those strong teams, albeit they might now be at home and virtual, but about consulting, asking for help, seeking those different viewpoints, but about empowering others. That delegation piece became really clear, because you can't sit and do it all, but you need to ensure that everybody's doing the right things at the right moment. So for me, it was probably to coach more than I'd ever done before.
You and I talked a lot, Lynne, about a post by Stephen Bartlett, who's famous for Diary of a CEO podcast. And he posted a couple of weeks ago about the real diary of a CEO, which was 7 days in his life, which showed him sleeping in airports and being away from his family.
Trying to find Wi-Fi signals in hotels where there was no Wi-Fi because there was a really urgent call you needed to take. I've been there.
and you know, a lot of what people talk about leadership seems like a bit of a facade sometimes. You know, we talk a language that some people try and live, but maybe aren't authentic around who they are as leaders. How do you balance that with being the real Lynne Walker, but also being a leader in Johnston Carmichael?
Do you know, I think it's because I talk a lot and I'm not scared to talk and get in front of people. And back in that moment in 2020, communication became even more key. You had to bring people with you, and you had to explain more of the why you were doing things. And I think it was that ability, I suppose, to not be scared to also say, I don't know the answer here, but we will get there. And I think that's where the authenticity came in. It wasn't about always pretending that everything, because that was a really challenging time for so many people. So it wasn't pretending that everything was going okay, but it was saying, but if we do X, Y, and Z, we'll get to that next hurdle and we'll move forward.
Yeah. So openness is key. In terms of building, you know, teams and building that as a leader, maybe building that trust in you because people can see that you're being authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was that bit of, we all saw the videos, didn't we? But what was really going on behind you in the background. But don't be scared of that in that moment, because that actually created the humorous moments that we all needed during that time as well. But we all got to know each other's families a little bit better. And we all got to see the day wear instead of the work wear a little bit more. And that's really where the authenticity came in for so many people. And you got to understand that other person.
And a lot of firms are kind of backtracking on some of that now and saying, right, everyone in the office, and we won't have the kind of more relaxed dress code, and we want to get back to this kind of amazing time that everyone thinks was pre-COVID.
Was it?
Do you feel that, or do you think that actually some things have changed for the better? Yeah,
I just think you don't look back. Everything moves forward, and that's in life, in profession, in work. So it's always about moving forward with new generations that come into the fold as well. So some people might look back and say that was a great time, but it was great because of the social environment you were in, the political environment, the markets that you were in. That's all changed. And I think what's important now is to recognise that different people have different priorities, life and work. And we need to be able to adapt to that. I think what is important, though, is recognising what teams need and being able to flex what might work for you as an individual for what actually works for the team and the business as well. And if you can get that balance right, then it shouldn't matter the extent to which you are working at home, in another office, your home office. It shouldn't matter how you're dressed. If you're dressed for confidence and dressed for your day, we talk about that a lot as well. If you're doing things with the right mindset of what's right for the team, for our people, for our clients, then you'll have the right answer for yourself as well.
And do you have any silver lining or lovely highlight from those early days in COVID that you take through with you now as part of a memory box, I suppose?
Oh, there's plenty of memories. I keep thinking that one day there's going to be all these films that come out, isn't there, and all these books about those stories. Maybe we're not quite ready to share them all yet. But it's probably getting to know people more during that period, and being able to help support so many people through it as well. I'm trying to think of one of those big moments, and I probably don't have them, Jude. There would be plenty if you didn't put me on the spot. But I do think it was definitely a catalyst for me personally in terms of the confidence that I needed in my career to move me forward. And that's probably one of the personal moments that I take out of it, is coming through that and emerging as that business line head that had led people and hopefully the wider firm. And then we came out of the pandemic and held a conference for 200 people, and you were fronting that as well. That was probably one of the moments. So not in that moment at home, but how we emerged. That's where all the silver linings and those big moments came from.
You mentioned a couple of things there, confidence, and earlier you mentioned imposter syndrome. How does that manifest for you? How do you challenge yourself when that imposter syndrome starts to creep in? What do you say to yourself that gives you the confidence?
So it spurs me on. That's what it does. So I actually turn it into a positive, that if you're out of a comfort zone, that's good, because otherwise are you just doing what you've always done? So it's not a bad thing to feel anxious and to be challenged. So that imposter syndrome for me pushes me to just try and be the best that I can be. But what you've got to watch is the balance, and I have been there where you then need to talk it out. And a big piece for me is about that ability to recognise when am I starting to spiral, and do I need that little nudge? And that's where it's finding those trusted people around about you that you can speak to and that can then just give you that little boost when you need it as well. And sometimes that's not necessarily colleagues. That can be my husband, my family, but it's the people that remind you of the good things that we're working towards as well. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have that little lack of confidence sometimes, as long as you can push through it with the right people.
And I think you mentioned there, it doesn't necessarily have to be colleagues, it's people outside of the working world as well. So, is there a different kind of challenge that you've had that's impacted on you outside of the working world? It's really difficult because I feel like work and life, they're so interconnected. They really do influence each other. So even that example I just used there, that was an extremely challenging time personally as well. But if you think of work, if you have a bad day at work, that can really affect your mood when you go home. That can affect your relationships. If you have a really bad day at home and then you're going into work in the morning, that can affect your energy and your motivation. So they really are interlinked. And I suppose a good example, turning on its head, of something that happened to me personally that then equally impacted work was
probably back in 2018, so a couple of years before that other experience, when at that point I was leading the business line, just newly taken on that role. I still had client responsibilities, so I was an audit responsible individual, so signing off on complex audits. I was aspiring to be a partner, so that was before I got promoted to partner. My daughter at the time, Leah, was 3, just turned 3, and my husband, now Kevin, was diagnosed with testicular cancer. So that was a real moment when suddenly there's this big shift in what your priorities are in life. And the focus becomes something different. So to date, my career had really, had been the focus. And then suddenly, no, it was family. We were really lucky, though, in that first 3 months, all of his treatment could be done locally, which meant it was easier to spin some of those plates. And there was great support, family, friends, work, colleagues as well. But after that first 3 months, we were told that it had spread to his lungs. So it was a much more complex disease than we previously thought, which meant we were transferred down to the Beatson Centre in Glasgow. Now, there's real superheroes for you, some of those consultants down there. But at that point, life became really tricky because you were trying to juggle family, daughter up north, along with a work and a role that was very challenging as well, with Kevin being down in a hospital doing treatment down there. But we got through that, the plate spun, but unfortunately it just wasn't the end for us, and the cancer was still there. So in 2019, with a third and last round, is what they said, of treatment, Kevin had to go into the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Glasgow for 12 weeks, solid. Limited opportunities to get home because of the high-dose chemo and transplants that he needed. And that was without being able to see Leah. And that was probably at the pivotal moment when I went, I don't know, can I keep coping with this? Everybody has the levels of resilience that they can manage. And everybody around about me from a work perspective says, take the time off, take whatever time you need, this needs to be the focus. But it was really funny because work was my focus. I didn't actually want to not have that part of my life. What I really needed was the flexibility to be in the right place at the right time, depending on what that was, which was great. So I could work from other offices. I didn't have to do core hours. I could flex that, and I had colleagues that supported me as well. And there is a good news story to this. So Kevin did get the all clear in 2020, albeit very much with the tumours still there. So we're under constant review every 6 months and will be lifelong for him to get checked, but that gives us peace of mind. But it was in that moment when I really learnt the lessons that probably come with me today from a leadership perspective, which is you can't control what you can't control. And it's a really bad thing to dwell on things. I became exceptionally organised. So that's probably what today I have lists and plans, but that's how life needed to be back then and even still today. But I just go with the flow. And I ride that wave. And maybe that's what helped me in 2020 when the pandemic did hit. It was just another curveball, but we have to go with this. There is no other choice. But let's do it, making informed decisions and with people around to support you as well. But a trigger in your personal life. You can't avoid that in your work life. You can't hide it. No. And it's how you manage the two.
Yeah. And I think that point is so important that I always think when people talk about work-life balance, it's actually a misnomer because work is life and life is work. It's everything. Yeah.
Well, I needed work back then. Well, it was the one thing I could control at that moment.
Absolutely. And I was going to say that I see that a lot with HR challenges, that people say, no, I want to be at work. They lose a loved one, something happens in their life, but actually being at work helps. Yeah. And clearly, you found that.
There was a focus. It was something that took you away from what was going on elsewhere. And there was nothing I could do. I could sit at the end of a hospital bed, but there was nothing more I could add at that point. So it was to be there for emotional support. But it didn't mean that I couldn't just tap away in the emails as well.
And you mentioned you were on that track to partnership as well.
Yeah.
So how did you manage that process, and would you give anybody top tips around that progression piece and thinking about their onward trajectory in their career?
I think it was about, at that point, having a great line manager that you could talk to, and how what was going on, did it steer you in a different pathway with some of the goals that you were working on, and how you got there together. So I would say to anybody that's going through anything in their lives, or even at work, if there's just challenges there, speak up about it, and people will be able to help you and set you on that right course. For me at that moment, I wanted the focus of work, but where I was going with it didn't matter. It was more at that point about, I suppose, the family. But maybe what I showed was resilience and the leadership skills that came through in that moment as well, about the control, managing what you can manage, the organisation, that meant hopefully there were still skills there. Well, obviously there were, that enabled me to get to partner in that year.
Do you think it changed how you were as a leader, how you presented? Do you think you were a different person in some respects after that experience, and how you maybe dealt with other people or related to people?
Do you know, I don't know. I'd love to ask people that, actually. They always say the best feedback's actually to ask those that are around about you, have I changed or not? I would hope that I've got a bit more empathy, can stand in other people's shoes well when there are these moments in their life. And sometimes I have to reassure myself and remind myself that everyone's got different levels of resilience, and you have to remember that too. But hopefully, I suppose it is that ability to be able to show a bit more empathy to people in the situations that they might be going through.
Yeah.
I'd like to think I was still empathetic before that as well.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned there, that bit around imposter syndrome, and, is there a top tip you would give somebody who's at that tipping point, maybe going into that spiral of negativity, and how they would then kind of boost themselves out of that space?
Yeah, so the first thing is to try and embrace it. And it's, so many people talk about imposter syndrome. So it's not something that there's only a minority that have. So it's to accept it, to try and spin it, I suppose, into that moment of good. I'm being pushed a little bit out of my comfort zone. So what help do I need, and how do I seek that help and support? And have I got all the tools needed to get me through whatever it is that you're struggling with, that's making you feel that way? But I do think there's something in feeling like maybe you are being pushed beyond some of your boundaries that's not a bad thing sometimes.
Yeah. And it's probably important to say that imposter syndrome is experienced by men and women.
Absolutely.
Often it's it's attributed to females.
Yes.
Imposter syndrome, but it's men as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can all face it at different times and in your life as well.
Yeah.
When you start to feel that as a parent. I mean, what am I doing?
On a daily basis.
What should I do?
For sure. Well, let's talk about that, because you've got a young daughter and a family, and you're an incredibly busy CEO. We talked about Stephen Bartlett and his juggling of that. I mean, how do you manage that?
I have an amazing family that have fallen into a structure. So it's a lot of discipline, but the family get very used to the structure I have during a working week and the travelling that I need to do. And it's on the basis of giving them the time that they need at the weekends, and also being a little bit disciplined on the weeks that maybe I'm not travelling as much. So if I'm not away on the Monday to Thursdays and I find myself at home, don't fall into that trap of then just sitting on the laptop in the evenings. Give them the time, because you are at home. And I think that's something that's really important. Go to the kids' clubs after school and things like that with my daughter. So discipline is something that comes in. The other thing that we try and do is make sure we're booking those little mini breaks, so we're all getting away at the same time.
Forward to.
But yeah, sometimes I do wonder why the family puts up with me. I'm sure there's some positives there, but it works. It works for us, and that's not to say it works for everybody though. But it works for us as a family.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that a few things there, around the discipline and the organising pace. And I suppose for every leader, there is that anchor that brings you back in. So, when things are starting to get a bit choppy, or, kind of going off piste a little bit, what are yours, or what brings you back into that reality?
Yeah, I mean, I probably spoke about a few of them there in terms of that control piece, but not dwelling on things that really are outside of your control. The key one for me is probably about your principles and your values. So it's really important to understand what it is you believe in, and if you truly believe in it, then live it. And that is almost becomes your guiding path when it comes to decisions and your behaviours. So, in our firm, we have 4 core values, but 2 of them are ones that stand with me from a personal point of view as well and get me through these tough times. And it's doing the right thing and standing in other people's shoes. It's about having the courage to do what's right from a decision-making point of view, but also being able to stand in the shoes of other people in the situations that you're faced with to make sure you're making the right decision. And if I fall back on those 2 values, you tend to find you get the right answer, and it pulls you through a little bit as well. So that's probably one of the core anchors that I have. The other one is not being scared to ask for help. So recognising quite quickly that I'm the type of person that does need to talk things out. I'm the type of person that likes seeds planted before we have to make decisions as well. So it's finding that trusted group to be able to talk things out with, and not be scared to realise, actually, maybe I don't have the right answer here, but that person does instead. I've found myself really surrounding myself by people that actually fill my weaknesses or fill my voids, does that make sense? So being able to build teams around me, and a big part of that does come down to coaching and supporting individuals as well, but of people that you're not threatened by because maybe they are smarter than you in some scenarios that you're in. But that's a win-win for everybody if we can get the right outcomes. But I tend to be one of these people that has an idea and I want to really, you're laughing, but I want to run with it. And then I have brilliant people around about me that then understand the detail and the risk and go, just going to slow you down a little bit, Lynn. But that's fantastic. I've got other people that know I can talk and talk and talk, but sometimes my written comms need a little bit of help. So I've got people that can support in that. And then I've got other people like yourself, Martin, where if I need that nudge, they come on, you know, you're fine, you've got this. So I surround myself in the people that ultimately, as a team, we can move things forward and we can achieve our goals.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. One of the best bits of advice someone gave me years ago, probably about 25 years ago, was always employ people who are actually more talented than you. Look for the people. So if you're able to suppress your kind of ego, you know, ego is the enemy, we talk about that, but great book. But if you manage to suppress that and employ people who are going to challenge you, who you can just let fly, then, you know, I suppose that's leadership as well.
Yeah. But it's empowering those individuals too, and letting them lead the way they want to and shape the career paths that they want, but coaching along the way. And I often say, if you've got people in your team and they're not where you want them to be, look at yourself first. Are you doing everything? Are you coaching in the right way? And you need to flex your style to help support and to line manage people as well. But you do need to look at yourself first when you're looking at that overall team performance.
And do you feel you do a lot of coaching day to day? Is that something that you think is an integral part of being a leader? Yeah,
I mean, I don't think I set out and go, right, this 1 hour call is all about coaching. Martin, are you ready for this one? But when I look back at the end of my day, I use a word a lot, and Kevin actually says I'm using it at home now, and I don't know if you guys have picked up the pivot. So this seems to be my word of the year is pivot, and it's not because I'm a Friends fan, I am, but it's because I often think in our roles, you start the day thinking you're going to do this, and it's all planned out in your diary, and by the end of the day, you've actually done this. But in between, I hope that what I've done is help support other people achieve their daily goals, and be that through just having conversations, talking it out, coaching and supporting. So I think a huge part of every leader's role is to coach.
And who mentors you? Who coaches you? Where do you get? You mentioned your team, but you know there's a limit maybe to how far you might go with some of the people who you're line managing effectively. Are there people external to the business? Is that family or?
Yeah, I mean, there probably is people that support me externally. I've had mentors over the years that have been fantastic at that right moments in life. At the moment, I do a lot of reading, like you said, that real life of the CEO and podcasts. I like the really small snippets where you can take away moments where you reflect and you go, that's exactly what I'm doing or what I'm not doing at the moment. So I don't think there's any one big mentor, but it's about the influences that so many different people can have on you. It's fantastic having, you know, within the firm, the regular check-ins where we've got 360 tools and you can get that feedback, but the feedback where you've got your own self, so you appraise and then you see how others, that's powerful because that's when you start to think, oh, I thought this was how I was perceived, but actually this is how I perceived. And then it's how you flex in between. And it's those moments when able to talk that out with individuals, my peers, is the pieces that probably pivot me into a different area.
And you've talked a lot about family as well, and you know, thinking about outside of the working world, what do you do in terms of, just letting off steam and, switching off from work? When you close that laptop at the end of the day, what is it?
I would love to say I have some of these great, interesting stories that you hear of so many other people doing, and it really is just not me. And it's terrible. And, there's the working week, there's the travelling, and with that, it's a really great lifestyle. You've got your dinners, breakfasts, lunches as well alongside. But I get home at the weekends and I literally just want to sit and put on like a short series on Netflix and just relax. But then what I have is the family going, "Oh, it's great, you're home. Let's go out for dinner." And you're like, "I don't want to go out for another dinner." So for me, it is that time to just sit and actually listen to the family. So that's my time when I stop talking, believe it, and just hear about what's going on from their point of view, and spending time at home and in the garden and walks. But I do like that because I'm away during the week. It's nice to get home, and switch off.
What are your goals as a person? For looking to the future, what are your goals as a person and your goals for Johnston Carmichael? Are they the same or are they different?
Well, they're interlinked because they have to be. And, for me, it's about what we can continue to achieve coming into our 90th year as a firm, but what we can continue to achieve with our strategic ambition over the next 5-10 years. Let's get to 100, and how I can hopefully continue to play a part in that. And that obviously then impacts back into my personal life and what that means for the family as well. I've never been somebody, and possibly some of that was because of what happened to us with Kevin, but I've never been somebody that's looked out and had that 5, 10, 15-year plan. I'm somebody that does probably more live into that 2-3 year sort of piece. And planning for that part of the future rather than anything beyond that, because I think what life has taught me and probably so many other people is you don't know what's coming around the corner. And I would hate to be so tied to a goal that I then became fixated on it when actually there is going to be another wave coming, and I'm happy to ride whatever that looks like in the future.
You're going to pivot on that.
I'm going to pivot and get on that wave. Surf the wave. Maybe that's what I need to say. It'll stick with you.
So if there's one thing that you've tried, in terms of leadership practice or a leadership tip that you'd challenge our next guest to try, what would that be?
Maybe something I'm trying at the moment. Now, you'd probably say, you would challenge and say, are you? But it's to talk less. And I mean that in the context of in meetings. Try to ask more questions. And I'm trying to prevent coming out with my own feelings on a subject or a topic until we've probably heard more of the room. And it's to allow those different viewpoints to come in. And often you can have biases and you don't know it towards a direction of travel. So it's to allow yourself to see things from a different perspective and to have your initial mindset changed. And I think you can only do that by listening, really listening. And I am somebody that likes to talk, so the not talking and sitting and listening to others in meetings is something that I would encourage everybody to do, really.
And it's that diversity of thought that's becoming a big thing now. Diversity is important. We work hard at that in the firm, but actually, I think what we've realised is that you can have a meeting where everyone in the room's the same.
Like-minded.
Like-minded. It's an echo chamber, and it's that getting those different viewpoints, I think.
I've always said I don't want to be a leader that people follow. I want to be a leader that I can influence people to understand the direction of travel, and I listen to their views and they come with me because they believe that vision and purpose that we've set, not just because they believe they have to follow. And that's really important about that diversity of thought. And ultimately all of that helps you make more informed decisions because you get more viewpoints on scenarios as well.
I love that.
I think it's great. There's nothing better than a good question and then a debate around that. So
healthy debates.
Fabulous.
Talking about a good question, you had one written down there.
Oh, I did. So, Lynne, final question. What would be your mastermind specialist subject?
Now, I'm going to admit to you guys that I did ask, was there going to be any sneaky questions? Because I hate being interviewed and then get the curveball question. So I took that one and thought, I actually don't know. So I'll ask Kevin, what does he think my mastermind subject would be? And do you know, he actually laughed at me. And he said, Lynne, you're the last person I want on my pub quiz team. You know lots of little things about everything, but nothing in any great detail to be a specialist. So I genuinely don't think I have a mastermind subject, but I'd be delighted to try one. See how far into a topic that we get. But I'm not your person for your pub quiz, that's for sure.
And just one other, I said that was my final, but actually, as I was driving up, something that me and my son do at the minute is a bit of a carpool karaoke.
Oh, don't ask me to sing.
No. No singing involved today, but do you have a favourite tune that you crank up and just helps you with that forward looking perspective that you have?
I don't think there's one tune, no. And I've got quite a mix. So I am one of these people that loves different songs, and it can change your emotion. So I tend to pick very carefully the type of songs that you would put on. If you got me on a Friday, then I'm back into my Brit pop and let's get going for a weekend, and then you're embarrassing the daughter. In fact, that's probably one other thing that I've got. It'll be Leah's playlist that's on in the car,
listen to their music.
more than my own. So no, there's not one song. But what I will say is I do believe that music changes your mood, and I believe there's the right moments to bring in those songs to help support you as well. So I'm a big believer in music, I am.
Yeah.
Any more from you, Martin?
I don't think so.
No?
I think that's a good point to end on.
Thank you.
The power of music and the power of reflection, I think you've given us today, and also the power of family and taking care of that and how that can shape your leadership journey. You know, thanks very much, Lynne, for joining us today and sharing your story. You know, we really appreciate it. You know, your resilience and leadership experiences are something that I think we can all learn from, and we wish you and your family all the very best for the future.
No, I appreciate the time.
And likewise, thank you so much for joining us today and just being very authentic and down to earth with your stories and the background. It was really great insight for both of us and hopefully for everyone out there as well.
Well, for all those watching and listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of Who's Steering This Thing. If you enjoyed hearing about leadership journeys and real life lessons, make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode.
We release new episodes every month, diving into inspiring stories and unique perspectives from leaders across industries. And don't forget to visit our website at johnstoncarmichael.com to learn more about how we, as a UK firm of chartered accountants and business advisors, help businesses navigate challenges and steer towards success. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.